Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sasha, and I am making custom dolls. I'll be honest folks, I had absolutely no intention on participating to this year's Mermay, or Mermaid Month of May, if you didn't know. But strangely enough, I found myself inspired, really. I had been going through a little bit of stress, and I really wanted to do another project completely unplanned, completely out of the box, because it relaxes me really. I had this Posea Reef monster idol in my stock box, and I figured if I wasn't gonna use her for a mermaid or a water theme project, well, she's probably never gonna get used well, at least not entirely, maybe just her face, so would have been a very big waste of a character that has such a nice potential. So then I decided to give her a whirl and just have fun, make a doll, don't plan anything, and don't do anything too elaborate, so not taking too much time and just relaxing and enjoying the process. One thing for sure is that I didn't want to sculpt or construct a whole mermaid tail. I considered it, but it would have been a lot of work, and I wasn't really in the right mindset for something like that. Either way, she has a very interesting shape, and I wonder just how much life I could breathe into this doll. So, like most of the bases I use, she is secondhand. I received her in a lot, and I am just prepping the canvas here first by chopping her hair as short as I can. Once that is done, I am getting a mug full of boiling hot water, and I'm gonna use that to heat the vinyl of the head so I can pop it off without much effort. You don't have to let her rest a lot. After a few minutes she should be good to go, and here you see I'm protecting my hand with a towel and I just effortlessly yank it off. Of course, it is possible to break the neck peg if you don't do it correctly, so I would advise to still be a little bit careful with it. Then I use tweezers to remove the plugs of hair from her head from the inside of the neck hole, and then I can use set tweezers just to take out the chunks of hair and glue that are left inside until, well, the inside is completely clean. Then I am taking the closest thing that I have to pure acetone, which is a heavy duty nail polish remover, and I am just using cotton pads to remove the factory paint that she has on her face and also her scalp. I finished by giving her a nice wash with the warm soapy water, and this is what I have left after doing all of this. Don't you think she looks a bit like Cara Delevingne like this? Anyways, like I said earlier, I really jumped in without a plan, which is something I like doing from time to time, and I had a few things that I found at my local craft store. I have these fake leaves wreaths, I have like those little natural dried flowers, there's that beautiful veil on the back there where the doll is, and well, some chains, a necklace or two. So yeah, I was just going to have fun with colors and possibly textures as well. I tied this little piece of yarn around the neck peg just in case I needed to hang her for drying or such. Also, for a change of pace, I decided to start with the body this time instead of starting with the face like I usually do. So I got a towel ready just to protect the body, and after priming it with Mr. Super Clear like I usually do, I started blushing the body. I really just wanted to play with colors and use a little bit of everything that I think would look good on that blue background. I use mostly pink. I mixed the warm one and the cool one, even though I prefer the warm one on the background like this. And I used also some peach, a little bit of yellow, and also a tiny bit of blue and dark green, and then some blue greens just to help bring out some shadows and give some dimension. You can also see around the belly that I was trying to blend a little bit that line from the color of the tail to the rest of her body, just to make it seamless. This is after a few coats of only pastels. It took a bit of convincing, but I'm getting somewhere, and I decided to start switching to paints just to try to add a bit more details. So the first thing I did was to go all over those lovely dots that she has, and I am just coloring them with a shade a little bit brighter, sometimes a bit darker than the background shade, and I'm following the same color schematic as is on her body. And I am also using a little bit of paint to define all those details around her hands because I think they are lovely molded and I wanted them to have their time in the sun. I ended up using a lot of metallic and bright pigments that popped, and I think it served the color story really well. For a tail here, I started by highlighting some of those ridges with a gold paint pen that I have. It's not gonna be that vibrant when I'm gonna be done with it. This was just as a means to add some highlights under the paint job that I was going to do. Because right after I jumped in with some of my metallic paints and I started adding some color gradients on those little tentacles that she has in the back there, just trying to make them seamless, trying to go back and forth between the colors, just to bring out the details and try to blend it the best that I could. Now I had this idea to give her a bit more texture. So after I was done with the paint and it was dry, I decided to use some natural moss that I have and glue some to her to make it look like she's wrapped in seagrass and algae. So I used some Mod Podge to glue it directly to the doll body, and I use also a bit of Mod Podge to seal it in. So when it was dry, I just painted over it a few times just to make sure that the moss is well preserved. After plucking a bit of fake leaves from that wreath I showed earlier, this is my result so far, and I really liked it. And now that I knew where I wanted to go with the color story, I was able to start the face up. And like I did with the body, like I do usually, I primed the face of the doll, the whole head, with at least 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear Sealant. Then I use the same pastel powders that I use on the body, and this is soft pastels or chalk pastels, I'm not sure how it's called or if both are used. Well, I use that to slowly bring out some colors and some shading to her face. This usually takes a few coats to start having a nice opacity on the colors. It's really about layering and building up the colors as you go. If you want to know more about the materials I use, everything is listed in the description box below. So now we are on the 4th layer and I am starting to add a bit more color using watercolor pencils. It's the Sealant, Mr. Super Clear, that is a magic ingredient that gives me the texture I require for the pigments to glide over the doll's head like this. This goes in a bit like it would on paper. So my first idea for her was to give her a more innocent, almost sad expression like I usually do on my dolls. And I wanted to give her a soft face with a lot of pinks and maybe either yellow or green eyes. And probably more like gold like eyelashes because I wanted to give her blonde hair as well. The way I saw the doll, it was something very colorful, very blue and green with pops of pink and purple, and the gold as the little accent in the middle that pops, that contrast, and that bring everything together. And I know I just mentioned it, but I've been asked a lot recently what kind of pencils that I use, and again, these are watercolor pencils, and the reason why we use watercolor over any other kind of pencils is because they are water-based, so they have actually less chances of staining the vinyl and smudging over time. It works better with the sealant that way, and again, the sealant is mainly the magic ingredient. Without a good sealant to help you get the texture, you won't have the same result as I do drawing on a doll's head. Though of course there are many, and I mean many doll artists over here, like other sealants, they have other techniques there, many things you can do. I'm just doing what I learned and what works best with how I like it to be done after been doing this for a few years. So please excuse my very chaotic and messy palette I am using here. These are a mix of watercolors and gouache paints that I'm using to refine the details on the doll's head. I'm usually doing this last on the couple of last layers. This is the step that takes me the longest because I want to be very delicate. Another advantage of using this sort of paint as opposed to something like acrylic is that you can just remove some tiny mistakes that you may made with a little bit of water. As for my brushes, these are nail art brushes that I bought on Amazon. They're really not super expensive and honestly they are amazing, and I've been having the same set for over a year now, so I highly recommend. And like usual, this stage of the process takes me forever because I like layering and I like taking my time, and I'm doing one eye and then it takes me forever to replicate it to the other side, and sometimes I get a bit lost into the process and fail to realize that our irises are a bit too high. But ultimately it mattered not because I decided to change her hair color, and this is what I did, and I corrected that at the same time. And now that the face is done, I can go and do the hair, and I'm going to use this yarn. It is 100% acrylic yarn. It's a big chunky ball of yarn that I bought a couple of years ago. This one is super soft. I just need to unravel it, and I just flat iron it and pull it a little bit, and this is the texture I get. It's very delicate, but I absolutely love it. It's soft and shiny. It's probably one of my favorite yarns that I own. So now that we have at a respectable distance from the doll, I will start gluing the hair directly on the doll's head, and for that I use my favorite, which is Podge. I apologize in advance, you will see bits of hair and a little bit of fibers fly and run all over the place. It's because we got hit with a pretty intense heat wave, and I couldn't just be there without my ceiling fan running, or else I would have, I think, cooked alive in this room. So, like I said, I am gluing the fiber directly on the doll's head, and I'm starting at the back and at the bottom. What you want is basically to circle around the head and make your way up. And here I don't recommend you do that on a doll whose face is already done, but I decided that I really loved how clean the framing of her face was, so I decided to plug a little bit of hair around it. But you really don't want to do that because any stress on the vinyl you put could potentially crack the sealant and crack the face up, and you don't want that. Here I'm just marking a line where I want the part, just as a guide for myself, because I'm gonna glue some hair wefts to make the part area. So if you want a clean part like that, the trick is to glue your wefts on the wrong side, facing in the opposite direction, so you can then flip it and fold it and have like the how I don't know what's the right word to describe it, but you can have that like the fold of the hair. And I'm using pins here just to make sure it doesn't move while it dries. It's a trick that I use very often, and if you have a little bit too long of a weft like I have here, you can just snip it. It's alright. The glue will dry and you'll be able to add more after. The idea is to hide the glue with the hair like this, so you want to make sure that you press it well into place, that it's straight, that it's exactly where you need it to be, just to make sure that everything is straight and clean and as nice as you can possibly make it. I like to wrap the heads with some cling plastic, kitchen plastic, to let them rest. It helps flatten also the wefts and the hair in the right direction, and I'm using yarn to tie it up, just not to crease the hair because yarn is so easy to crease. And I want to show you a little something there on the top of her head. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that some of the weft that I use on the part weren't thick enough, because you can clearly see it parting through the thin places, and you can still see some of the glue under it like this. So when this happens, what I do is that I pin the hair out of the way the best that I can, and I just add more wefts, sometimes in the direction that I used to glue the part initially, sometimes in a more intuitive direction. It really is depending what it looks like. So just make sure that when you put the wefts in the middle to make the part, that they are thick enough so it doesn't show. And when that was all done, I just added a little bit of texture in the hair. I made little braids and I gave her a little bit of curls using the metal chopstick method, if you wonder. So I've worked really hard on blushing and detailing her body, and the last thing I wanted is to hide all my work. So I went on and designed a really simple little top for her using a piece of that fabric that I showed at the beginning. I glued a little bit of moss, a little bit of fabric flowers, and I had some chains. So I just kept adding a little bit of this and that everywhere on her body just to give her a bit more details. I've also added a little bit of pearls. These are nail art embellishments. And for her roots, a light dusting of chalk pastel protected with a tiny bit of airspray. Also, all throughout the project, I prepared on the side a halo crown that I wanted to give her because I felt like I wanted to do more headdresses, crowns, and stuff like this. So I'm just taking some plastic from a plastic hanger, and I am twisting a bit of wire here just to make a second half circle just to help it stay on her head a little bit better. I painted it with gold and added a little bit of pearl colored paint on top of it just to give it that effect so it wasn't too harsh. And before adding too much details, though I did glue the pearls at this stage, I wanted to see how the whole doll was, so this is why you see that part at the end. I made those sections with some of the full leaves that I have on that wreath I showed at the beginning, and I've glued some moss over it. I just thought that they would look nice as algae with a bit of shading with some brown and yellow. And I finished it with some paper pink flowers that I glued everything with hot glue. And you have it, and there she is, all completed. I've named her Cordelia, and it means daughter of the sea. I'm very happy with the overall result, and I think she's extremely beautiful and vibrant. I'm not used to using such saturated colors, well, not as much all on the same piece. So much so, in fact, that I had a bit of a trouble taking pictures of her without my camera just going haywire. Anyways, I sure do hope that you enjoyed the video and that you like the doll that I made for you. And now, let's give a shout out to this month's biggest supporters. I want to thank Charlie for ordering a commission and also donating items they don't use anymore. I also want to thank Arteza for another donation that I will be receiving soon. I want to thank Emma for supporting me through coffee, and I want to thank Miranya for her unending support. And I also want to take a hot minute to thank personally every single one of you that leaves comments on my videos, old and new. I read everything. I don't actually always respond in a timely manner, but I hope that you understand that I do mean it when I say that I'm very grateful. Normally you will have another video by the end of June. This is gonna be a Pride themed doll, and I hope that I'll see you there. In the meantime though, as usual, please do stay safe.